All right, well, I think I'm just gonna get started and give you the basic spiel, and then we can go over whatever specific questions you have, and I can at least try and help you with that stuff. So obviously, Audacity, free software.
Yes.
It's more.
Oh, it looks very different. Should I update it?
That might help you.
Yeah, that would be.
It's more robust, obviously, than GarageBand in terms of what you can do with it.
Yeah.
But the UI is very dated, even with this new updated version, it's still a very dated UI, and it's like not super beginner friendly. The learning curve is steep.
Yeah, that's very fair. I remember I couldn't get rid of background sounds, and so you'd have these like awful like clicks in the background, but that's fine. It's like 2.1.3. Is that the most recent one? No, it's 3.
Some odd, yeah.
It's new. Okay. Yeah, I might download the new one. So it's like.
So.
But they're the old. No, which one is it?
Yeah, I don't think they've changed like super drastically. But so obviously we have our sort of playback controls. We have recording and playback volume sliders here. All of these are basically choosing what your inputs and outputs are as far as recording and playback.
Recording directly on Audacity kind of sucks. Not gonna lie.
I don't disagree, but you can do it.
Yes.
And I mean, at the very least, it is simple, right? Press button. Now I am recording in Audacity.
Yes.
Stop for that. And obviously, similar to in GarageBand, you can click on these recording levels over here, and they will give you it will monitor, so it will give you a rough idea of what it is going to, like what the volume is going to be as it is recording.
Oh wow, okay, just kidding. I shouldn't update this because I haven't updated my Mac, so it's not supported.
Yes, that is
before I did that.
that is the other thing. We run into that issue a little bit with our Macs because since we're not up to the most recent OS, just because we typically stay like one generation behind.
Yeah.
That also means that we can't update everything to like the most recent version. Yeah. Especially like the actual Apple applications like iMovie and GarageBand and whatnot. So even those are usually about 1 or 2 generations behind. So Audacity's workflow I find a little bit weird as far as the actual editing process is concerned. Yeah. Obviously you've worked with it before, so you understand the sort of basics of it, but as far as like deleting, reordering, all that sort of stuff, that you can just straight up highlight something and delete it, which I go back and forth on whether or not I like that.
I kind of like it just because it's so easy to do, but also then you can't, it's like I have to think very carefully before I do something because it's so easy to forget what I've already done.
Right. So I mean, realistically, I think obviously kind of like the safer way to do things is to do the Control-I to split your track. Then you could say Control-I, and now you have a separate section or separate clips basically, and I can move it around. I think this is a relatively new feature. I mean, I might be wrong about that, but at least in the past, I have seen issues with, or I've had issues with trying to reorder clips. I think previously you had to take a clip, move it into a second track, and then move it past, and then back up into the first track. Like you couldn't drag things past one another in the individual track.
I think I do recall that. Yes.
Yeah, which was absurd. I don't know why they ever thought that was.
Well, shoot. I guess I'm stuck with that unless one of my peers does. You probably also won't be able to add on to his computer just because of how annoying the file sharing is.
Yeah. And again, we do have, should be the same version as this on all computers in the DMC. So if you do want to just use our computers to edit the project, you can certainly do that. Obviously, this is the other thing that I find a little bit weird about Audacity is that like the tools, you have like your selection tool is like your standard one, and you can't move things with it. You can only select things with it, where most media editing applications that I work with, you can usually select something, but also drag it around.
Yeah. I think GarageBand does that, no?
What do you mean?
Yeah,
you can select something and move it around. Yes, GarageBand does allow you to do that.
I will say with Apple, they do a really good job of making that interface more user-friendly.
Yes. And a lot of the reason why I recommend people use GarageBand for their podcasting projects, because let's face it, for whatever reason, for better or for worse, professors are asking for podcasts a lot more these days.
Yeah.
I find it better for just simplicity and ease of use, because nobody who's doing these podcasting projects typically is doing any like really crazy audio editing.
It's usually just cobbling together clips.
Exactly. And to do that in GarageBand is very easy. If you are like recording directly into the computer from mics or whatever, like if you're using our audio studio, GarageBand is very simple and easy to do that with. Again, you can do that all in Audacity, but like there's all the benefits that you get of using Audacity, which is like all of the extra effects and things that it can do, you're not going to be using. So I don't necessarily recommend it for people unless, they're like, oh, well, I don't have a Mac and this is my only option.
I might have to ask.
So let's see, tips and tricks for Audacity. Obviously we have our mute and solo buttons. It's in a much more unattractive way. It is basically the same sort of track header as GarageBand. You have your pan slider as well as your gain slider. It has basically all the same elements that you do with GarageBand. As far as all of the fancy things that you can do, most of it is in this menu here, the effects menu.
Oh yeah.
And so obviously a lot of these things are things that you are probably not going to ever touch for your project, because I don't think you're really adding reverb or echo or phaser to your.
Nope, not at all.
I mean, maybe you wanted to make it really fancy and stylistic. It was a stylistic choice, right?
Yes, the reverb might make it sound a little bit better.
But you were talking about normalizing. We select our audio.
I think that's the only thing I need to do, probably because everyone's recording from different microphone distances.
Yeah. And so, typically you'll probably want to set it to around somewhere between -8 to -12 decibels as your normalized peak amplitude. And so it's as simple as that. That is like really probably, as you pointed out, like the main thing that you're going to be doing with your podcasting project. The other one that you might might be worth knowing or knowing where it is fade in and fade out, right?
Oh,
So
yes, that'd
um
be nice. Does GarageBand have that? I presume it does.
so you were here for the GarageBand tutorial,
I was
right?
not here.
Oh, you were not, okay. GarageBand has automation, which I prefer to just having like a fade in, fade out effect.
Mhm.
Because basically what you can do is you can sort of set key points along a line and then change the, and like, basically you can set a track for the volume. Like, so you can say, start from, 0,
Yeah.
come up to this level, and then like maybe you want it to fade down at some point, and then you can set a key point and have it fade down, stuff like that. It's that's like the one thing that I actually know how to do reasonably well, because I do that in Premiere for my audio. And GarageBand, it's the same. It's basically the same process. You can also automate a bunch of the other effects that you can do in GarageBand. Not that I think that anyone is touching any of that, but I mean, like, you could have like dynamically adjusted reverb in your track or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe you need it for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, we're not gonna be in reverb. None of us are singing anything that requires reverb. All talking. Well, true, I guess maybe you should just use GarageBand. That'll be a lot easier for us to project.
I do think it generally is. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not trying to tell people not to use Audacity ever, but like, for what people, for what people are doing for these podcasting projects, GarageBand just is a simpler workflow.
This interface, no, the interface is so much more user friendly. Apple does a good job of that with their, for the most part.
For the most part.
Things that can be replaced with Microsoft products, no, but everything else, I think they're all right at. iMovie is pretty easy. The interface is really understandable. I
Okay,
would say.
now let's see if I can find my own files. Should. And so obviously, much like GarageBand, you can just sort of click and drag files directly into your project to add them, right?
Oh, wow, that's a very loud file.
Yes, it is. So maybe what I want to do is grab, well, to select all of this and normalize it so that it's not so loud. I actually genuinely don't know why they made this such a loud. There we go. That looks a lot nicer. Now if we whereas before, well, everything's very quiet through the speakers, but so let's see. Cutting and moving clips, obviously you understand. We kind of went over that. Control L is the shortcut for splitting a clip. The whole Control C, Control V thing works for selection. If you want to just cut out a, or sorry, not Control C, Control X, Control V to yeah, you can do the whole cut, copy, and paste thing, like like word processing, but in Audacity. But of course, then that then you run into the issue of, well, now this has fused this clip, which is why I typically am always more a fan of just splitting the clip, and then if I want to delete it, I delete it. If I don't, then I don't. Right.
Yeah.
What else?
What else do I mean? I don't know. Let's keep Audacity do that. I'm looking at all of these folks and I'm. Yeah, I don't think they necessarily, yeah, unfortunately, I think these. No introduction, maybe. Let's see. I might just text my group and see how many of them have Macs. I know I have a Mac, and another one doesn't have a Mac. So we'll see. I don't think the professor is particularly uptight about what the audio sounds like, as long as we have something. I think she said something like, "Oh, you can really just record on your phones, and that'll be fine." So there's no, we don't need to like check out microphones and things like that.
Yeah. But I mean, that sounds about standard. I think literally the only class I've encountered where there is sort of a expectation of quality is the literal podcasting class,
Yes.
which makes sense.
Yes.
That
makes sense.
But yeah, and then I guess probably the last thing to go over, I guess, is exporting, right?
Yes.
You have all your standard options. MP3 or WAV are probably the only two that you're really going to be touching. For your class, it sounds like she might not care, or he, I don't know who your professor is.
Usually, MP3 people usually open more. Wave sometimes gives you trouble for some reason.
Yeah, not WAV is generally a little bit less compatible, but obviously the whole point is that it is an uncompressed file format, and so it's going to be quote unquote maximum quality.
We don't need that.
But like that's also going to be like somewhat gated by how, like what you're using to record, right? Like if you're using your phones to record, saving it as a WAV file maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, because there's not any quality lost there, to be honest.
Exactly. So MP3 is probably fine just to save you the hassle of large files in the long run,
I
right?
did use Wave for my earlier projects just because there was more, it was like more music based, so it was. important,
Sure,
but-
sure. That makes sense.
And there was like a fancy microphone, but in this case, I don't think we'll. I think we should be smooth sailing. So.
Yeah, we do have the audio studio. If you
Yes.
guys want to use that to record your podcast, it can have up to 4 mics recording simultaneously.
Do we have to book that room?
Yes, you have to reserve it.
Where would that be?
It's actually in the Fontran study room reservations. If you know where that is. And it's under AV Studios. Obviously, because it's part of that system, I believe you can only book it up to 2 days in advance, because that's how far the system goes.
Ooh, I don't book study rooms very often.
Can't say I blame you. I don't know that I ever booked a study room when I was an undergraduate.
ABC, there's there's B42D and B42E, which we'll see is down here.
Yeah, so those are both rooms in the in there. One is the audio studio and one is the yep.
Actually, only the audio.
Well, I mean, if you're doing some sort of video podcast, then
No.
no.
Is it soundproof? Is that why?
It is sound resistant.
Yes.
We do not have like the full soundproofing, like egg crate foam type stuff on the walls. It's one of those things where people think it's actually a lot more soundproof than it is. So if you're just like talking and recording a podcast in there, probably not going to really like bleed into the rest of the DMC. But like if you're belting a song,
Yeah.
then yeah, everyone's going to hear it, which some people don't like. But
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So
Definitely check out that room and look it out.
so yeah, for your purposes, honestly, saving it as a standard MP3 file is like probably perfectly fine. I feel like I've read studies about bitrate and what the human ear can actually perceive with regards to like MP3 differences. And I thought it was something like anything beyond like 210, you know, like anything in their extreme or insane range, like people can't actually tell the difference really. So I don't know. I'm not an audio engineer.
Me
but-
neither, especially not for like podcasts. I know for music, people really like, their ears are blown out from all the, because it's easier to hear the intricacies when it's like higher volume.
Mhm.
I try to spare my poor ears. Plus my like audio device is not that advanced. I have some good headphones, but they're not with me here. So I'm sticking to Apple stuff. So like, there's not much quality that we're losing other than.
Yeah.
I think that's really bad. But anyway, thanks for this one person session. I
Yeah, no
guess.
problem. I realized that I did not go over a whole lot, but realistically, I think the like three things that I touched on are the things that you will actually
Yeah,
use.
Exactly,
So-
exactly. And I do have a little experience with Audacity, so I'm not going in completely blind. If we do choose to use Audacity, which I know another person also did use Audacity, so she might be comfortable